What's up, everyone? My name is Alex, and I use he, him, his pronouns, or AMR's pronouns, and I want to talk about male-related terminology. This is one of several videos that I want to do on Malehood 101. Still kind of keeping it in the scope of my own experiences so that I'm not talking for someone else. You should know by now that I am a demi guy. I am a demi-gender man. I only partially identify as man, but I guess some people might be showing this to somebody as an educational thing and may not, the people watching this may not have seen my other content, so hello. Glad to be here. It took me forever to put together the outline for this video because I couldn't figure out a way to really make it make sense, but I think that I've got it. The basic terminology, male-related terminology, man, male, relates to malehood, partially or wholly. My own experience, demi-man, demi-male, demi-guy, demi-boy, just specifically partially being binary male. Similar concepts to demi-boy, Libra male, that is mostly agender and partially male. Nanoboy, it is a very fractional, a very small experience with malehood, but obviously important enough that, you know, it's been made into an identity to describe that experience. So, partially male, that's my experience. Basic terminology for men. I always want to go over, just the basics. Like, just the baseline, ideas so that we can get into more complicated topics. So, man, guy, boy, dude, bro, a lot of them are casual. Those are all terms, all nouns for, men or their male-related terms. Husband, boyfriend, those are partnered terms. Brother, uncle, father, familial terms. Honorifics, sir, mister, those are the two most common. There usually isn't there's no other gendered honorifics. Gentlemen, when you're referring to, people, men, like a group of men. So the ways that you can be a man or relate to malehood in some way, I want to talk about gender versus alignment versus expression. Gender is the core of one's identity, your gender, man, woman, non-binary, agender, anything really. Any gender is a gender, duh. Alignment, that is like, it can indicate a connection to a gendered experience without actually being that gender. It's a qualifier. It is an extra little layer added on to your gender. You can be any gender and have any alignment. You can be a man and be woman aligned. You can be genderless and be female aligned. You can also be, a woman and not be female aligned at all. There's many different ways that this can, happen. There's a lot of variety to gender and gender alignment combinations, I guess is the word I was looking for. It can really happen so many ways. It depends on the individual person. And of course, it's also very important to note that gender is not inherently aligned. A man is not inherently male aligned. That is up to the individual person. So alignment is, it can show a relation to a gendered experience without being that gender, and it can mean so many things for so many different people. There's so many ways you can be aligned, binary, non-binary, or unaligned, or neutral, aligned, just anything. It's just about as flexible as gender is. So presentation, that can be an expression of one's gender. If you're a male, you might want to present masculinely. You might find it important to do so in order to pass as male. A man who presents masculinely has the intent of passing as male, but it doesn't, like, men can have different gender expressions. It is called a gender expression. I usually call it presentation. Gender expression still works, but it may not be an expression of one's gender. Some people are gender non-conforming, so a man might, present in a way that's more feminine. And that's not an indication of that person's gender. It's just the way that they want to present outside of their gendered experience. That's kind of my experience. I don't really present masculinely. I do, in a way, present masculinely so that I can pass as male. It's important for me in passing. That's just my personal experience. And sometimes it's the experience of other trans men. Completely depends, I guess, on preferences, really. For me, presentation can also be more feminine or more neutral, and that is an expression of my queerness instead of an expression of my gender. I consider my presentation to be separate from my malehood, and for a lot of people, that's also their experience. That's called gender non-conformity. It is presenting in a way that does not match your gender at its core. Gender is usually the core of the identity. That's why I, use words like core and layers, because that's how I visualize gender to be. At least like my own gender, I see it in layers. Being a man at my core, and layers of like no alignment. I don't think alignment applies to me, but a layer of presentation that is outside of my gender. I'm not trying to present as any one gender. Some people, that is their intent with presentation. Again, it completely depends on the person. Some people might want to present in a way that has no gender definition, as in like being defined. Some people will go with a completely neutral or genderless look in their presentation. Again, depends on one's preferences, but you can present or align in any way, no matter like what kind of male experience you may have. Same goes for any other, any other person's experience with malehood. Same goes for, any other gender, men, women, non-binary people, genderless people, multi-gender people, depends. So let's talk about being transmasculine. This is technically my experience. It's technically what my gender can be described as, is transmasculine. It is a broad term that means a person transitioning in a masculine way with the intent to pass masculinely or to have masculine features. And it's important because it is not like being a transgender man. That is somebody who is transitioning to be male. And, I've always talked about masculine doesn't equal male. They're not the same concept. They can, for some people, they can be kind of the same thing. They can be related to one another, but, masculine isn't male. Malehood is not a masculine experience inherently. So transmasculine, shortened to transmasc usually. Anybody can be transmasc. Women can be transmasc. A lot of women will transition in a way that is masculine. A lot of like butch women will transition in that way. It doesn't mean, it does not inherently mean transitioning from female to male. That is usually specifically trans men. Transmasculine people, you can be any gender and be transmasculine. You can be a transmasculine genderless person. You can be a transmasculine woman. You can be a transmasculine man. Usually a transmasculine man can just be called a trans man, but usually a transmasculine man can be considered a trans man, at least like by technicality, but you wouldn't want to assume that all trans men are transmasculine. The opposite term would be trans feminine. You can be a trans man and be trans feminine. You can be a trans feminine genderless person. You can be a trans feminine any gender. And that is the opposite experience. Transitioning in a way to look more feminine, to have more feminine features. There's also another term, trans neutral. Some people transition in a way that's neutral. I've known a couple people who have undergone the process of trans neutral transitioning, and it's the same concept. Some people want to look not feminine or masculine, but just kind of somewhere neutral, somewhere in between, where there's no real defined presentation or no defined look, gendered look, I guess. And same thing, a trans feminine person isn't always transitioning from male to female. Trans neutral isn't always, it doesn't have an inherent experience like that. So gender is your identity at its core. Let's stick with malehood. Let's kind of pull the focus back to malehood. That's what this entire series is all about, is malehood 101, and the different ways you can experience malehood. But I know that a lot of this you can just replace the word male with female or any other gender, and it kind of still fits. Like, you can still be a transmasculine woman. You can still be a genderless woman. You can be a woman who uses this terminology to describe themselves. But let's pull it back to malehood so that I can keep using that as an example. Because I'm a man, so I think it would just make more sense to keep it in that kind of scope. I am a man at my core. That's my gender. My gender is man or demi-guy. I can say demi-guy. I kind of use either or. It depends on what kind of environment I'm in. Non-binary, that's also my gender. I'm a non-binary man. That's what a demi-guy is. So that's my gender. Alignment, I don't have one, but I don't consider myself unaligned. I just don't think that alignment applies to me. If it did, maybe. If it did, then, maybe I could say I'm feminine aligned. Maybe I could say that I'm xeno aligned, which is, aligned with the concept of being xenogender. It's outside of any typical categorization of gender. So I could be that. I could say I'm unaligned. So my alignment, that little layer of my identity, that's how you describe that. Presentation. Imagine malehood at its core, and no alignment for me. That is not my experience. But imagine it's, basically a planet, and the next little layer is another planet revolving around that. Pretend it is a long distance between one planet to another. Presentation layer of my identity. Presentation is far from my gendered experience. Besides the fact that I am transitioning in a way to make me look masculine, that is important in me passing as male, just for my own safety. So my preferred experience is that I at least look the part, no matter how I'm presenting. But presentation, sometimes slightly masculine leaning, sometimes pretty feminine, not hyper feminine, but more feminine leaning. For me, it's pretty flexible, but I consider presentation to be an expression of my queerness. So just, I like my gender presentation to be seen as something separate from my gender identity. Years ago, I might have considered myself to be a man at my core and my presentation layer to be masculine, completely across the board masculine. Like, I want to pass as a man and I want to have a definitively masculine presentation. Now that's kind of changed for me, but that recap of, talking about gender alignment expression, that is my personal experience. Back to the transmasculine thing, that is technically my experience. Transmasculine is transitioning in a way that makes one look masculine, to have masculine features. It's also important to note that you don't have to be on hormones or having had surgery in order to consider yourself transmasculine. Maybe you just socially transition and you change your pronouns and your name and your presentation to fit your masculine experience. That is another way that transmasculine can manifest as a gender experience. For me, it is physiological. I'm transitioning in a way that my body and my facial features are masculine. And of course, transmasculine doesn't mean male. I am a transgender man. I am transitioning to male, but not all trans masks experience this. That is not always the intent of being transmasculine, but that is my personal experience, is that I'm a transgender man, transitioning in a way that's masculine and transitioning to male. For other people, it might be different. So let's talk about some lesser known male related terminology just super quick, because I talked about men and I talked about demi-men and I did not really cover anything else. So I want to talk about just, other male related terms that people might use who consider themselves men, but in part. Agender boy, also called boy X. It is spelled like this with the X in the middle, to indicate it is a genderless boy. Boy flux, a fluctuation in boyhood, in like the amount of maleness fluctuates. So that's called boy flux. I brought up Libra male, which is mostly agender and partially male. A Zoe, those are people who are non-binary men or non-binary boys. That's technically what I am, but I've never related to this term particularly. But the X indicating like a different kind of gender. So Zoe is a non-binary boy. Nick Sphere, a person who is both genderless and male in some capacity, kind of the same as boy X in a way, but for some people it might be like there might be some distinction, I guess. Proxphere, that is a male experience that is separate from typical male experiences. It is kind of being a non-binary boy, but Proxphere is specifically like it's related to male, but it's on a separate plane by itself. It is different. It is a different kind of male. It is kind of a type of neo-binary, which is what I had coined. That's a term that I made and a flag that I had made to indicate like being like relating to the gender binary, but in a very queer way, some way that is different than what you might expect. Paraboy, that is mostly male. The other term, the equivalent term, is Magiboy. I have brought that up in previous videos as a term, and it's technically my experience, being mostly male, but it's not a term that I've thought to use. Neutral male, a gender neutral male. That's what I consider myself. It's a very lesser known term, but similar to a gender boy, but it's a gender neutral boy instead. And of course, you can kind of make combos between these. You can say, boy X flux. You can say demizoy. You can say nyxsphere fluid or nyxsphere flux. You can kind of put terms together. You can slap the word fluid or flux on the end of any of these terms, or put the word demi in front of any of them, and I guess it just depends on the person. You can be demi-proxsphere, definitely. That seems like a term that might fit me too. Demi-proxsphere, I think that sounds interesting, partially relating to a male experience that is on its own plane, somewhere separate from the gender binary, related to male in a way, but not quite being male. And also I wanted to note the usage of the word boy in so many terms. Why boy and not man in almost all of these terms? Boy flux, boy X, demi boy. What is with that? It is, part of it is a reclamation of the word boy, of soft malehood, of being seen as, like, if you're a non-binary man, like, people call you boy. It's like not man. It is like a softer or smaller experience with malehood, and it's kind of a reclamation of, like, you called me boy, you infantilized me, so that, I guess that's what I am, demi boy. I personally don't use demi boy anymore. I think the older I get, the more I'm inclined to say demi guy. But that is the reason for that. And for a lot of people, boyhood was denied. They were not allowed to be a boy in childhood. So growing up and realizing, like, yeah, I'm actually a boy. People may hang on to that and decide, like, yeah, I wasn't given this option as a child. I wasn't told I was allowed to be a boy. So now I'm using it as an adult, because I didn't get to have that in childhood. So, that's also part of why, there's a preference for the word boy over the word man. I think it's also due to a lot of younger people creating neo-labels. That's where you normally see the word boy being used instead of man, because for a lot of people that's kind of awkward. There's young teens coining these terms, and they're not going to want to call themselves man. You can just replace the word boy with man instead. And it would still fit one's male experience. So that's kind of it. This particular video, I had so much trouble writing. I just wanted to cover, like, male-related terminology in general, and, the different ways that people might describe their gendered experience. So if I missed anything, I'm sorry, but I do plan on recording another video on malehood. I have at least 2 that I have planned for the near future, and I want to talk about basic concepts. And the next video, I'm looking at my book right here, presentation and transitioning. So this will get into more of the physiology of malehood, and I will try to keep it basic, but I also try to call back to my own gendered experience, and talk about, like, these are terms I use, this is how I'm transitioning, this is what my gender presentation is, and everything. I try to kind of bring it back to my own experience, because I never want to talk about someone else's experiences if I don't know for sure what that experience is, if I don't experience that myself. So I can use examples, but I really want to keep using my own, my own experience, my own labels, what I, how I talk about myself as a man, and how I relate to malehood. If you have any ideas for, like, just basic, malehood 101 concepts that I can incorporate into this, let me know, because I was really struck with writer's block on this series. I wanted to explain basic concepts without, like, talking so much about me, but just general male experiences. But I also I wanted to make sure I covered everything, and that I talked enough about, certain concepts, certain ideas and everything. So just like let me know what else I can like cover, and I will try to write something for that. It was originally going to be like a 12-part series talking about very specific concepts, but I realized that the videos wouldn't have been long enough and I wouldn't have had enough information to talk about. So I started combining them. So male related terminology became like a video rather than specifically talking about male related identities or specifically talking about honorifics. And, I'm going to be talking about transitioning and passing and everything. And that's going to be, a broader video topic, so that I can kind of stretch these out and actually like get enough information in them. So yeah, show these to your friends or your family or whomever, and maybe someone will learn something. Like, the male experience is so varied, and I've always believed male and female to be umbrella terms for a wide array of experiences. So there's a lot to be said about being male or being a man, being a boy. So that's about it. I'm never good at ending these videos. I don't feel inclined to really make this a long-running series, but I thought it might help somebody. So I am signing off for now. See you later.